So, if it happens, I wouldn't, well, don't beat yourself up or whatever. We've all written stuff where we're like, hey, that was, that was dumb. I shouldn't do that. But the wonderful thing about the internet is you just take it down, assuming you haven't gone mega viral and people have screenshotted it, just delete it.
Oh, things fall so fast. I think one of the best lessons I learned when I lived in Austin and I was still in my library career, they sent me to South by Interactive every year. It was like one of my bargaining chips when I took the job. And um, in LA, one of my weird connections, I know the people at Funny or Die, and they sent a panel, and so I went to go like watch the panel. I wasn't going to sit there, but I wanted to support them, and it turned out to be one of like my best memories of South by. They were talking about how to make content go viral, so of course the room was packed.
Yeah.
And the creative team was up their panel, just shooting the shit, just talking about how they do it. And the honest to God truth that came down to that people just couldn't accept. It was so funny listening to the questions come back again and again and again. And they were like, we just create a shit ton of content and post it every day. And the things that take off, they take off like that. And the stuff that's not sinks so far, so quickly to the bottom of the pile that nobody even knows it's there. So nobody even cares. So we don't even worry about cleaning it up or, that was so embarrassing, whatever. They're like the way information flows in our modern digital internet-y universe, the stuff that we think we cringe about, nobody's listening at all. Like nobody cares. They don't even notice it. They don't even see it because the viral stuff blows up so quickly to such a degree that it's like a light that just sort of washes everything else out. So, their advice was like, these were entertainment people, but they were like, post the content, like post it. And I thought that was so good. I love that what you said, like just take it down. I felt like I did that recently. So I parked a question in the chat, but I feel like you already answered it. Because like I have some trauma in my background and it informs the line in the sand of how I choose to serve my audience. It informs the boundaries.
Yeah.
And I figured out how to have that messaging because my sales messaging person, Danielle, who will join us next week, she helped me with that, in the last few months. And I redid my welcome sequence at the end of 2022. And I was just like, I got to tell the story. And the welcome sequence was my head in the toilet. Somebody please hold my hair. And then after a couple of weeks, I was like, oh no, oh no, no, that can't be the welcome sequence. And Tanya loved it, which I thought was interesting, but Tanya knows me.
Yeah.
So like, but I changed it and I noticed that the unsubscribes from the welcome sequence went way the fuck down.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a big learning moment.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting how you knew, you found the kind of like balance line. And even when you pushed over it, you were like, oh, that feels bad, but you were able to just pull it back. But to also sort of add on to that, something like a kind of, I don't know, filter that I encourage my clients to think about if there's something like that, right? Where you do want to share something and there's a legitimate reason to share it, but also you don't want to just like pull your chest open in front of the entire internet. I tell them to think about minimum viable truth. So like, let's say that you had, I'm just like making something up. Let's say hang on, I'm trying to think of a client. I had a client who had anorexia, right? She had dealt with a really severe bout of anorexia when she was a teenager. And she wanted to talk about that in her story, but she didn't want it wasn't like specifically related to eating disorders. The whole point was that she had been really sick. And so that's what I said. Just say, like, when I was a teen, I got really sick for a while. Like, that's true. And nobody needs to know. You don't have to get into like, I only weighed 85 pounds and, all that kind of stuff. So I think we're encouraged to do the full expose. And I'm like, nah, man, like just say minimum viable truth. It is absolutely true. You don't have to lie about it. And you don't have to get into all the details.
God, I'm gonna create a t-shirt line. Like I've already got like 5 quotes out of you. um, I feel like okay. I feel like that goes beautifully with Megan, what you parked in the chat about bravery and relationship to authenticity. Do you want to dig into that?
I would love to. Do you want me to just riff or do you want to say more things about it first, Megan?
Well, the idea here for me is that I've always wanted to be on social posting to create buzz around what I do. I think there's a lot that I could put on social, but I'm a very private person and I'm very frightened of being seen on social media. I'm very nervous about it. and it makes me deeply uncomfortable. But I also want to find a balance. Like, I think that it's a really excellent way to get your face in front of the people that need to find you. And I want to get comfortable with it. Like, I want to be able to start doing some posts that are relatable and teaching people great things. But I don't know how to get over the hurdle of being frightened. I'm not as afraid of using an authentic voice as I am afraid of just like stepping up to the plate in the first place.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how to reframe the feeling that comes when I consider what could happen if I am seen by people that are going to be mean to me or judge me or like not be as welcoming of my content. Like, I know that there's going to be haters and people that throw shade because you see it everywhere. That's part of stepping into the public light and putting your stuff out there. Or worse, the crickets, right? Like having things not happen the way you want them to and being heartbroken that people don't resonate with something you've said. Like, I don't know how to navigate all that very well. And so I've just chosen to not do it at all. But I don't think that that's a good way to live either. So
Yeah.
I was hoping that you might be able to speak to that and what you've done with your clients in the past to help them deal with that reality.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Clients and me constantly. I am incredibly private. And I also do in my like non-business work, I do inmate advocacy work. And so like it's important for me to have a very defined boundary around what I put out publicly and then what I put out privately just for like safety concerns. So I feel you. And there's nothing like it is so hard to work on something and to sort of like put your heart out a little bit, right? To make that bid, like if you're thinking about the John and Julie Gottman relationship thing, you make that bid and the internet's like, right? It feels terrible. So my advice around that is to first start thinking about like I know you have the desire to do the social media. I would get really clear about what you want it to do for you because that's going to inform how much you show up and how you show up. So I'm just making up examples, right? If you were going to do something where like it was, I don't know, let's say you want to become an influencer, you're going to sell smoothies or something. Then obviously you're going to need to be very visual, very much on reels, show everything. I don't think that's what you're doing. So I would, but you can see how that kind of like informs it, right? I would also sort of shift your perspective in that right now you're like, oh, I need to do social media so that it helps the business. But I want to shift it to where you're making social media serve you. Like, how can I use this tool as opposed to how can I like mortgage some of my personal life into content and hopefully get something back from it. Because that's a really quick way to get burned out and frustrated because you will never be able to fill the whole of the internet. The algorithm will always want more than you are able to give because you're a person and not an algorithm. But as far as the bravery with that, I think little bitty steps. If there's something you can just try and see if it feels good. And if it doesn't, do something else. And then another thing that I often tell my clients and something I do myself is if it's an issue of visibility of like, oh, I don't want to be seen like for who I am, or there's like, I've had clients where they're like, hey, there's something in my life that I legit cannot share on the internet because it's going to cause problems. Like it's going to be a safety issue. Get really, really micro. So instead of like, here's my day and here's the 7 things I did. Oh, also, da, 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 da. You could like do a zoom in on those beautiful flowers behind you and do it like a super up close picture and then talk about what like how beautiful they are and how that ties into your love of aesthetic and what that does, for your business offers. So basically, let me see if I can sum that up into some useful bullet points. Think about the intent. So like what do you actually want it to do? Because that's going to inform what you go ahead and do. Reframe it as a tool that serves you as opposed to you trying to feed the algorithm because that it just won't work. And then if it's like a visibility issue, get real micro, real small, and tie that in. So all that to say, there's no one right way to do it. It's just kind of finding what feels safe for you as you do it.
Okay.
I think I monologued at you for like 7 minutes straight. Does that help? Questions?
I think it was maybe a minute and a half, and
It felt very long in my brain.
it was not long. It was very succinct. But also it kind of exploded a bunch of other questions in my head because
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with this universe in any way since I have been avoiding it. So I would love if you could unpack a little bit further, more detail around how to go about the assessment around, okay, if I want the social media to feed me, not the other way around, how do I determine what that needs to look like? How do I arrange that and set it up so that that's what's happening versus me trying to leverage my life
Yeah.
to feed the algorithms? Like, how do I flip the script?
Mhm.
And then the other thing I would say too is like, how do I know? I mean, I know what I want it to do for me, which is I want it to bring me clients.
Uh-huh.
But like, what do I do about that? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, my idea is I want to bring ADHD people to me. So
Uh-huh.
I was going to start putting great tips about how to live life with ADHD and skills and tools that you can use. And like, there's an endless thought process there, like nonstop data that I could be pouring out into social. So I would never run out of content.
Yeah.
Like, is that the idea that like I can go with that where it's like I just pour that kind of content out and that is going to make the internet come to me rather than me going to the internet?
So, oh, these are great questions. Let me work backwards. Yes, and having all the information that you can share with them is fantastic. And unless you do talk about it from your perspective, it's just going to be one more like informational post, right?
Right.
Now, this does not mean here's how I struggled so hard with this really terrible thing and felt like garbage until I found this one tip. And you can too, which is how a lot of people do it. But I think it's more just about it's about what it means to you, right? Like thinking about how you would share this stuff with a friend, because I think that's what you're ultimately working towards, right? You want to have this relationship with people where they feel like you're a trusted resource. They can come to you to work with you. And whenever they show up on your page or see one of your posts, they're going to be like, oh, she gets me. Like that seems like what we're going for. So that kind of gives you an idea about the level of personal to share in it. It's whatever you would want to share with somebody so they could be like, oh, yeah, she gets me. And then, as far as speaking to your more structural question, which you asked first, it's thinking about what you want them to do is get to know you, right? Know you and trust you. And it sounds like probably interact with you a little bit on social media as well. Um, and then thinking about where they are actually doing that. Do your people hang out? Are they on Instagram? Are they on Discord servers? Like, where are you going to find these people? And then what kind of interactions do you want to have with them? So, do you want to lead intimate conversations in small groups? Then, maybe a Facebook group is going to be a better bet. Or are you just interested in, getting the attention and then maybe you just do the one-on-one work? In that case, a more broadcast heavy medium like Instagram or like a Facebook feed could be better. So it's kind of, I think, getting a familiarity with all the tools that are available and then thinking about like, okay, if this is what I want and this is what I got to work with, like, how can we make that work in a way that's going to make my nervous system not feel like garbage?
Mm. Oh, that's so good. What about Megan, your question sparked some for me because I hear frequently, and I have to quiet that voice in my head all the time, but the vanity part.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people have a hard time asking about the vanity part because most of us are not Barbie model influencers, and those people are so heavily filtered and CGI'd to begin with, anyways. I love, by the way, toasted almond filter on Instagram. Favorite thing in the world. Gives me the best eyelashes. Love it. And I'm not ashamed. um, but I think I see a lot of people in my world who come to me for help and they've asked about this authenticity quotient and it shows up through like systems of like creating content and not ending up under a pile of files and like all the stuff. But when we dig and dig and dig on that spiritual emotional level, the vanity part shows up pretty early actually, and it's really hard to admit it.
Yeah.
And like there have been days where I didn't want to show up because I was like, I look real tired, I don't feel good. I mean, of course, like I like makeup, like I feel better. I put some on today too. Um, but like how does somebody get over that hump and show up like wildly imperfectly. Like inconsistent is better than none at all.
Yeah.
And because we were talking about that before we hit record today, and I think that would also be great to get into today about just showing up, period. Like how does somebody get over that like self inner critic that is like, you don't look good today? Like, especially as women, can we be honest? Okay, like the aesthetics around what is considered attractive for women on the internet is fucking
Yeah.
ridiculous. And um like, I mean, even I find myself avoiding like booking a new photo shoot, which I really need to do because
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I've gained this weight over the years, and I've been losing a bunch because I've been on this like health journey. But I'm like, in the back of my mind, I am honestly thinking like, let me wait till I get to my goal weight. I should be there
Mhm.
by summer. But I'm like,
Mhm.
what am I waiting for? Like, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm like, that's like, you know, I'm not being authentic about like actually showing up. And I went live a couple times this week with people, and I have forced myself not to put a filter on it because I was like, then I'll look like the weirdo Barbie filter if they're not filtered. You know?
Yeah. No, that is a for real thing. And with so profiles and like actual photo shoot photos, that's a little bit different because you use those for a long time.
Yeah.
Last time I had my photos taken, I had a pixie cut. So, it's been a minute, need to get it redone. But as far as just the everyday showing up, part of it is just remembering like deep down when it comes down to it, nobody gives a shit. If you're not a beauty influencer, if it's not your job to look professionally pretty, then most people are just going to be like, huh, look at that. It's a human. That being said, it's an aesthetically forward medium, right? People who can show up in this more aesthetically pleasing way are generally rewarded more for it. So what I tend to tell people is like, know what works for you. It's the same advice when it comes to finding your style, right? Like, know what kind of clothes work for you, know what's good. And then I tend to give people the like, I call it the post office metric. Like, would you walk into the post office looking like this? Yeah, like I walk into the post office looking like pretty grungy, right? Like my hair, I don't know, my roots are growing out. I'd probably wear my sweatpants. But like if it was to the point where my hair was actively greasy, right? Like I'd be like, no, I'm not gonna go post office like that. So it's just kind of like as long as you're hitting the basic how humans walk around outside and look relatively well metric, it's generally okay. And if it does feel like for me, it actually feels very exposing to be on video. I can do this stuff just fine, but if I'm doing like a live or something, like it's really hard for me. And so I've set up times afterwards where every time I do an introvert live, an Instagram live, then I always make sure that I just take 10 minutes to like not do anything right after that. Even if I'm not feeling tired right after it, I'm like, nope, I know that my nervous system is just going to take a second to catch up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, and I think Tanya, you and I talked about this sometime where you were like, yeah, I just started showing up to video calls like I look like, and people were like, oh, that's Tanya. Okay. So yeah, I think people are much more accustomed to that now as well. And there's a lot of sort of false expectations, I think, within us of like, oh, but the influencers show up great and like their ring lights are wonderful and everything. So I think long story short, do what you need to do to feel okay and don't worry about having to look great.
I'm loving the thread that's going on here of minimum viable, like
Yeah.
minimum viable, acceptable appearance.
Yeah.
And the
Like,
post office is such a low bar. I'm kind of cracking up.
like if somebody would not call a wellness check on you when you go into the post office, you're doing great. Like, you're fine.
Are you wearing pants? But are you wearing pants?
Or can anyone tell? If you're not, then it's fine. But another thing I like to remind people about with this is like content is a conversation and conversations have pauses. So we are taught to just broadcast, but none of us here I'm not a multinational media department. I don't think any other of you are somehow departments that I have not yet realized. Um, and like if you're just talking to somebody, right? That conversation's gonna have pauses. Sometimes you sit there and just like chill with each other, you're not just like the entire time. So if you're in a space, which I find myself in, I would say like, basically like every third live I'm actually supposed to do, I'm like, no, I have a legitimate no in my body for this. And I don't do it. And instead I'll post some pictures on a story or I'll do something else. So I think not worrying about the perfection or like trying to like push yourself through this drill sergeant, like I am going to show up on live 3 times a week. And if I don't, no one will ever hire me. Like, no, there is nothing on the internet that is worth getting that stressed about.
You said a mouthful there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Thank you for entertaining my vanity question. Because I was telling
No,
Tanya
it's
in a voice note earlier this week, and I'll batch record my YouTube videos, and I looked at the raw video, and I was like, oh God, like I look so tired. Like maybe I should record them. And Tanya's like, I love your videos. They look great. And I was like, I know, I just need to edit them and just like they're fine.
yeah.
Every time I go through, every time I record them and I see the raw and I'm like transferring it because right now I'm just recording on my phone, and then I transfer them like onto my computer so I can like deal with them, and then so I'll see them and I'm always so fucking critical of them.
Yeah.
But then I get into editing because I'm like, well, shit, content's got to go out this week. And
Yeah.
then I like stick them in Camtasia and I just start chopping them up. And then I'm like that was a really great point, Mary. Like, past Mary was very smart, and it's very frustrating.
It's like it is so human, and that happens like whether you're talking about appearance or writing. I've worked with clients, they get like frozen in their voices when it comes to putting something on social media. They'll talk to me all day long, and then when it comes to doing it publicly, it's like I can't, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of that, there's work to do in, there can be work to do around visibility and feeling safe in your own body and stuff like that. But sometimes it's just about doing it with a friend because it is so much easier for me to sit and talk to y'all than for me to be like, hello, internet. I can't see any of you, but I'm going to talk for like 5 minutes at myself.
It's hard.
The worst. So like what I do with my clients, especially the ones who like I have a lot of neurodiverse clients, I've got a lot of clients with dyslexia, like writing is just not their deal. So I'm like, man, just like WhatsApp me a voice message, I will transcribe that shit and put it on the Instas. Like that's how it goes. It's really easy.
That is a great little tip. I love that.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time with clients. I've written a book that way where a client talked a book at me and I put it together.
Oh,
Yeah,
I like that. I'm
it's
looking at
fun.
Megan on the screen. I'm like, right? They were like, yeah. Oh, that's good. That's really good. Because lately I've been discovering people are loving the verbal processing
Yeah.
through voice note.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all of us who are of a certain age. I don't know. I don't know. But it's working. And talking to a friend, like I think that just highlights the community part, why it's so important to like not operate in a bubble.
No. And because you start saying weird shit, like you could like curl in on yourself if you operate on a bubble. And that's where we saw, I know you and I talked about this on our live. We saw some public figures like very publicly make some very bad mistakes in the past couple of years in the name of like authenticity. And they're like, well, I'm just a little bit racist and that's how it is. And I'm like, no, no, that's not how we do the authenticity thing.
Before we hit record, we were talking about the importance of showing up. And right now, the energy is just slow. And I'm noticing this reluctance in people
Yeah.
to just show up. And it's not, and I kind of want to make a distinction. Like, I feel like it's not so much showing up for, say, like a group like this, like, who the fuck cares? We're recording, whatever. Right. But it's about showing up for you.
Yeah.
And I see them not showing up for themselves ultimately, which the coach in me is just like, you know, I feel like it's another layer deeper. It's like how, and maybe all of us can offer some wisdom from our respective coaching corners, but like how do we help people? Oh, Tanya, yeah, you want to ask a question about that?
First, finish your question, and then I'll ask a follow-up
Okay,
based
like
on what I think I'm seeing.
well, I'm wondering like what all of our perspectives are, given the audiences that we work with, on helping people move through that emotional hump when we're not the therapist, we're the
Mhm.
coach, you know, And so there's a boundary, like there's definitely a line there and you have to navigate that. But in this nature of authenticity and we're solving business problems for people, helping them grow, like you've got to show up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like not even the question about creating content for Instagram or newsletters or anything. I mean, it is literally like showing up every day to do the work. I don't love JK Rowling so much lately because of all the trans comments, but she had that like famous interview quote where she was like, I showed up every day and I wrote like, show up and do the work.
Yeah.
And there's a very unglamorous part to authenticity, which is you just show the fuck up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think like I love that you brought that up because one of my big things that I've been shouting about on the internet for like 10 years is the difference between authenticity and the aesthetic of authenticity. And I think that we cannot, like, we do not have the energy for aesthetics anymore in that sense, like, of just showing up and being like, let me broadcast my, like, here I am. I'm Rachel Allen and I run Bolt from the fuck off. Like, I don't have the energy for it. And so just showing up as a person instead of trying to broadcast that with actual authenticity. Sometimes that authentically looks like I'm like, hey, I can't do my introvert co-working this week. Sorry, y'all. Shit happened. And I think the more that I think people get scared of that because the more you show up like that, the more your actual self and values show through, right? And so when you see people showing up with what is authentic for them and what it is right now is they're being a little flaky. Like they cannot, I think Mary, you and I talked about this and probably other people as well. But like I've had a couple service providers over the past couple years who have just done really crazy shit, like walk out in the middle of contracts and, do really flaky things. And I think it's exactly like what you're talking about, Mary. The Hogwarts sorting hat is at play, and we're really seeing where people are at just amplified,
Yeah.
whether that's authenticity or anything else.
Yeah. The ability to like follow through.
Yeah.
To me, I see it as ability to follow through on you. That's a deeper thing. That's where that's where you go with the therapy into the therapy line. But yeah, I've seen people offer things and just not deliver. And I can't think of, I mean, Megan, it's like your questions from earlier. I can't think of a worse inauthentic thing to do. Not just to the people, but for you.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've seen it framed of like, oh, well, this was a big learning opportunity for me. I took $10,000 in sales and didn't do fuck all with it. And I'm like, there's other humans involved here, man. Like, just because it's an authentic experience for you, that does not mean that you're inured from the consequences of your actions.
Oh, damn, you're dropping like sound like left and right. Jeez Louise. Tanya, did that scratch any itch there?
So, well, and now I'm like, I can't, the words are here, getting them here is hard, but so this idea of showing up, so I feel like at first I was going to say that I feel like there's this like desire to blend into the background until I have something that is worth taking the stage for, right? But I'm reminded, so this client, and I've had clients who do this historically, but I have this client who is really hot to trot on TikTok right now and doing all the TikTok workshops and everything. And of course, the problem with doing all the workshops, as everybody here knows, is nobody wants to talk about the fact that it took them 500 videos with 5 viewers to get to the first video that got 100,000 viewers, right? And nobody wants to talk about the video that got 100,000 viewers was actually the third video I did. And the only reason that one got so big is because this other weird thing happened in the Super Bowl, mentioned this one thing, and people went to TikTok for it, and then my thing showed up, right? It's super arbitrary.
Yeah.
And so she's been doing all this stuff. And she's like, I'm going to do this challenge, it's going to be every day. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Whatever you want to do. That sounds awesome. Put it here. We'll repurpose it.
Yeah.
First day, she gets her 4,000 views. Life is great. Second day, it doesn't do so well. Third day, I'm like not even paying attention because I've decided TikTok is not my space. And as long as I can stay completely ignorant to the world of TikTok, I will not have scope creep with clients. So day 6 rolls around and she's like just voxes me like frantic, like, you've got to help me figure out this TikTok thing. I don't know what's going on. I had my 4,000 views and now nobody's seen it. And I think Facebook doesn't like what I'm doing. And so I'm like going in and I look and I troubleshoot a few things, right? I was like, okay, well, you're doing this and this and this. This is wrong. Day 8, I get a message. I didn't do it yesterday. I'm not going to do it anymore. This is not worth my time. Right? She is not a flaky person, but it's this, like, it's not successful unless I've gone viral, right? And obviously she gave herself a 6-day threshold to go viral. And on day 6, she didn't have her 100,000 views. Therefore, everything was bad, right? It was a bad idea. She didn't look good. It was this and this and this. And so I feel like, yes, people aren't showing up, but I feel like part of why they're not showing up is we're still stuck to this celebrity standard of what makes showing up worthwhile.
Yes.
And so on the top, like, to get us back to authenticity, like, for me, like, it's a core mission to move people past that.
Yeah.
But of course, then the question is, like, how do you do that when you're one person? Or here, I think all 4 of us would like to do something like that in our own neck of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
How do the 4 of us do that when collectively we don't have 1 million followers?
Yeah.
And there's, 10 people with 1 million followers each who are spewing this narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we get the credibility that they have without sacrificing our own integrity and authenticity to do it?
Oh, God, that is such a good question. Also, I hate TikTok with the fire of 10,000 suns. So
I love you for that.
Oh, do I feel you?
TikTok is like the dumpster fire of the internet. I will stick to that statement. It's a fucking slot machine. You go in there and it's just like, it's literally built to manipulate your brain.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing ADHD work with Megan here and diving into it. And I'm just like, I now see so much how it literally triggers all the wrong spaces. It's the devil. And I get it. People are getting, but it's like, it's vanity. There's so much vanity wrapped up in it. And it just drives me nuts. But anyways, sorry, I'll.
No, but I think, like, so Tanya, to kind of like dive into your question, I mean, you were talking about credibility. And what I also saw in there was we're seeing a lot of people tie conditional authenticity to standards of performance that are impacted by factors that are not in their control. You don't control the algorithm. You don't control, I mean, Facebook does stuff, whatever. And so to try and this gets back to what we're talking about with Megan, to try and sort of like leverage your authenticity, something that's truly valuable to you, to most of us, I think, and then have the internet not care. Like, it's because it's not the right currency to begin with, if that makes sense. There's a quote that I tell my clients all the time, and let me see if I can get it in order. But it's a Burroughs quote, and he says, there are no honorable bargains for, oh, hang on, I'm going to fuck it up. There are no honorable bargains for something like intangible values, like souls, for tangible exchange of money. And so if you were trying to throw that out there and hope that the internet will see your value and validate you back, I mean, maybe you hit the slot machine and you get the 3, I don't know how slot machines work, whatever, you get it where it makes the noise and all the coins come out.
It's not coins anymore. They give you like digital cards. I just learned this. And I was like, what's the fun in that?
No. That makes me very
We need a girls trip to Vegas. This is
You should so do that. You should so do
that. For metaphor market research. So we can actually give an accurate to the current state and time metaphor on slot machines. We should all do it.
We'll batch all our content. We'll just take videos of each other walking through Vegas. That'd be brilliant.
Oh my God. Yep.
It'll make you can look like you travel because they have like those little like diorama travel things, right?
Yeah, we can take a bunch of
pictures. Great.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Oh God. Yeah, but I mean, that's why I tell a lot of my clients, like, whatever, there is no like wrong mechanism for trying this stuff out, but whatever you're doing, like, make sure that your success criteria are things that you actually have control over. Because remember when TikTok first came out, right? Everybody's like, oh my God, I gotta learn it like right now. And I'm like, okay, that's fine if you want to, but I think it's important for you to understand, like if we look at press releases from Facebook, they've specifically said they are boosting video views. You're not getting those views because people actually want to see it. You're getting it because they're being artificially boosted. And to play into, like, I have a no for playing into an algorithm's game, you know, like I'm going to use it as a tool, but it's so stressful to try and like keep up with what they want and then give it to them. And I'm like, no, my audience is you people. My audience is not Facebook. So that's the reframe that I encourage people to do.
That's a good distinction. And I love the note about celebrity too. Like, I think celebrities float above the algorithm. They don't have to worry about the algorithm because they're bigger than the algorithm. I'm pretty sure that when Rihanna's posting something from the Super Bowl, she's not thinking like, can I optimize this for the algorithm?
What hashtag should I use?